Health and wellness, I think in dance, the conversation also blends in with performance, which is absolutely appropriate. But we often get a lot of requests from dancers where they'll bring up conversations about, oh, I want to improve my turnout.
Yes.
I want to get higher extensions, you know, and obviously in order to make some of these health and wellness conversations palpable, I know on social media and online, everyone's talking about, do you want higher extensions? Do this, or here's my program. Do you want more turnout? Do this, you know? So everything's kind of framed in this idea of like, once again, more is better.
Right.
So, you know, if a dancer comes to you and they're like, I want higher extensions and I want more turnout, what do you feel like are some of the conversations you're having with them?
I think firstly, just them understanding that there are a lot of components to address within that. From an anatomical standpoint, taking a look at like hip structure, understanding how they're like controlling through their range of motion. So that's where the conversation of like strength with length comes in. We can get into the splits quite nicely, but then we cannot maintain that height relative to like a develope or an extension. And so that's where we would emphasize, hey, we have this range, let's figure out how to strengthen within that range. That's a big conversation I think we're always having with like flexibility. Do you own the range that you have? And then also hip structures vary. So sometimes it's just explaining that to them, showing that to them, perhaps with like our pelvic model. Just because you are a certain way structurally does not mean you're completely limited. There are improvements that we can make and there are things that we can address.
Yeah, I mean, essentially just respecting the body, right? Respecting what we have, but more importantly, I think acknowledging what we have and what we've been given. Once again, I think there's a huge cultural component of how dance is so visual, so the visual spectacle is obviously what we begin to think about in terms of performance. I want my leg to look like this. I want my body to look like this. There's a huge mental health consideration as far as why everybody is different and every body is different, you know, and I think being able to shed light on those things just gives people so much more clarity, one, but then I think on the other hand, it also provides us the opportunity to talk about where can we find range and where can we find control, right? What are the things that you've been doing that haven't been working, and how can we have a very succinct conversation about that, you know? And how is this affecting your performance? Why do we want these things? And generally speaking, if we're talking in a competitive context, of course, there's I think you mentioned it before, right? There is the aesthetic and there is the technique that is informed by 400 or 500 years ballet of you know, repetition. So and I think there's nothing wrong with wanting higher extensions, and there's nothing wrong with wanting more turnout. I think it's just, why do you want these things? One, and then two, what is achievable in the health context,
within what you
right?
have,
If I tell you that, hey, look, this is the way that our hip is shaped, let's acknowledge that, and then let's go from there, right? And oftentimes the conversation becomes about, well, these people are often born with like certain facilities, but it doesn't make or break who you can be as an artist. It doesn't make or break who you are as a person, just because you can't get your leg here or your turnout to like 180, which I mean in many ways is anatomically impossible, like full 180, right? The bigger question is then about how is this dancer in front of us, how can they make sense of that, and how do we provide a movement experience that allows them to, for lack of a better word, feel that? Right?
And I think giving them that knowledge in the first place puts them perhaps a little bit more at ease or gives them more comfort.
I often think too that, you know, someone may come and say like, oh, I was learning choreography from a specific person and I was not able to do this in the way that they could. And a lot of it is more anatomical, like this person choreographs this way or moves this certain type of way or teaches this certain type of way because that's how their body moves. Just because you don't move like them does not mean you're less than. right? Once again, there are ways to like work around it, and we'll always find what we can work through. And generally speaking, there is some, there are ways to work through it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it comes down to like, oh yeah, are you respecting the body, and are you able to acknowledge that for yourself? And if you know that, if you know that, you know, it's not to say that higher extensions aren't your thing or more 10 out isn't your thing, but if you can be purposeful about finding ways to find that, then once again, good for now, good for life, right?
Yes.
Yes.